For several years, our division made it our sacred duty to bring Christmas to the families who needed it most across our vast, rural county. For us, it wasn't just part of the job, it was our calling. Months before the first snowfall, we'd begin our preparations in earnest. Our headquarters became a workshop of hope, filled with the sounds of hammering, the whir of sewing machines, and the rustle of wrapping paper. We gathered, repaired, and built gifts with our own hands, pouring our hearts into every wooden toy and every stitched garment. Each year, the response from the men and women in the division was heartwarming. Each officer, office worker, every division employee, regardless of their personal circumstances, found ways to gather truckfuls of items, toys that needed mending, clothing that could warm a child through the bitter winter, donations both humble and generous. But it wasn't just us. Ordinary citizens opened their hearts and their wallets. Local craftsmen donated lumber, and others transformed it into sleighs, wagons, and wheelbarrows. The women in our lives knitted scarves and mittens, sewed dresses and shirts. We compiled our lists carefully, reaching out to town offices, schools, and churches to identify those who needed us most. One memorable year, I was commanding a detachment in a particularly rural region, a landscape of frozen lakes, dense forest, and scattered homesteads. Winter had arrived early and with a vengeance. November brought snow that buried fences. December added layers upon layers until some rural roads simply vanished beneath white drifts. Travel became treacherous, sometimes impossible. Yet we had made a commitment, and we intended to keep it. Thus, on the morning of December 24th, we loaded our vehicles with clothing, toys, festive food, and turkeys, determined to reach every family on our list before nightfall. Over the course of that morning and afternoon, we made stop after stop, the gratitude of each family keeping our hearts warm as we continued into the evening hours. As darkness approached, we had successfully delivered to nearly everyone on our list. The division car had managed admirably on most routes, pushing through snow that would have defeated smaller vehicles. Just one final family remained. We'd saved the most difficult delivery for last. A mother and her 4 children, all under the age of 8, living alone along a stretch of abandoned bush road several miles from town. There was no father in the home. They had no telephone. And in weather like this, they had no contact with the outside world. Before attempting the journey, we stopped at the general store to gather information and ask about road conditions. Concern began to mount on the kindly storekeeper's face as he sketched us a rough map on brown paper. "You'll make it 3 miles north without much trouble," he said, tapping his pencil on the counter. "But then there's a side road, more of a track, really. It hasn't been plowed, because they're the only ones living out there." He paused, worry creasing his weathered face. "I actually haven't heard from them in 2 weeks," he said, pressing a bag of candy and nuts into my hands. "Add this to whatever you're bringing. And please, come back and tell me what else they need." We thanked the store owner and set out into the night. By 7 o'clock, darkness had fallen completely. The temperature had plummeted, but mercifully, the wind had died. Above us, stars pierced the clear sky, and a pale moon cast blue shadows across the snow. We navigated the first 3 miles successfully, our vehicle's headlights cutting through the night. Then we reached the turnoff to the bush road that led to their home, and our hearts sank. The road had disappeared entirely beneath a daunting blanket of white. Not a single footprint or animal track marked its surface. The junior officer and I stood there in the cold, studying the impassable barrier, seriously considering retreat. Then he spoke quietly. "It's going to be a bleak Christmas for those kids." His words crystallized my resolve. "Let's give it a try," I said. We loaded the box of toys onto a small sled we'd brought, one of us pulling while the other pushed and steadied the load. We plunged into snow that rose past our knees, sometimes to our thighs. Every step required enormous effort. The thoughts of my own children, warm and safe at home, drove me forward when exhaustion and the frigid cold whispered that we should turn back. We could barely see in the darkness, terrified we might pass the house entirely. Finally, through the trees, my companion spotted it, a faint flicker of light, like a distant star. Invigorated by the sight of our destination, we pushed through the final drifts until, nearly spent, we stumbled through a sagging gate in the wire fence and tromped up to the door. From inside the small home, we could hear children's voices talking, perhaps playing. We knocked, and quiet fell as the small voices inside hushed to silence. After a long moment, the door creaked open slowly, and we glimpsed the bewildered face of the young mother surrounded closely by her young children. I can only imagine what they saw. Two large men frosted with snow, standing in their doorway in the dead of night. A brief moment of apprehension flashed across the children's faces, but transformed into wonder as their eyes fell upon the sled and its cargo of wrapped presents. Then a young, excited voice pierced the silence and declared, "See, Mama, Santa Claus did come." After a brief explanation of why we were there and assuring them the contents of the sled were for them, the young mother burst into tears. Then she threw her arms around us both, kissing us soundly. "You are an answer to our prayers," she proclaimed. "It's a miracle, nothing else. Just a miracle." Through her tears, she explained how she'd tried to prepare the children for disappointment, telling them that Santa wouldn't be able to find their small house through all that snow. But they had refused to accept it. The oldest boy, with the faith of an 8-year-old, had insisted, "We can always pray." He'd gathered his siblings, and they'd knelt together on the rough wooden floor. The mother had joined them reluctantly, dreading their heartbreak when morning came and nothing had changed. "We had hardly said Amen," she whispered, "when you wonderful men knocked on the door." We laid out the turkey and food and gifts while 4 little children swarmed us with hugs and kisses. Even we 2 hardened officers couldn't hold back our tears. The family had been trapped by the deep snow for 2 weeks, surviving on flour and root vegetables from their small garden. The mother gave us a shopping list of essentials, and the children showered us with more embraces and 1,000 thank yous. The trek from our car to that woodland home had been brutal. Every step a battle against the snow and the cold and our own exhaustion. But the return journey was entirely different. We practically floated back through those same drifts, our hearts so full of the Christmas spirit that our feet barely touched the ground. We had set out to deliver presents, but we were the ones who received the greatest gift that night.